I still remember the sound, that sharp, metallic clanging that tore through the calm of dawn. It was the kind of noise that doesn't just wake you up, it stays in your bones, echoing long after it's gone. When I stepped outside, barefoot and half asleep, the air smelled of wet soil and blooming jasmine. But that peace, the peace I built with my own hands, was shattered by a metal sign hanging crooked against my fence. In bold black letters, it read, "Public Dog Park." My name wasn't on it. My property was. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. The sun was barely rising, its light cutting through the mist that curled around my garden beds. Then I heard barking. Not one, not two, but a dozen different voices, deep and loud. When I turned toward the noise, I saw them. Strangers, walking their dogs straight through my open gate, letting them trample over the flower beds I'd tended for years. My lilies were crushed beneath muddy paws, my roses snapped at the stem, their fragrance mixing bitterly with the smell of wet fur and soil. "Excuse me," I shouted, my voice trembling between anger and disbelief. A woman holding a golden retriever just smiled, shrugged and said, "Oh, the HOA said this is open now. It's a great idea, isn't it?" She didn't even slow down. I felt my chest tighten, a sharp heat climbing up my neck. My garden, my sanctuary, was now a public playground for dogs, and nobody had even asked me. I stormed toward the gate, but before I could reach it, a voice called out from behind me, calm and collected. "Morning, Ms. Morgan." Douglas Hale stood there, HOA president, local real estate mogul, and self-appointed guardian of our community standards. He wore a beige suit even at 7 a.m., the kind of man who probably ironed his socks. His smile was polite, but his eyes had that smug, knowing glint I'd come to dread at board meetings. "What is this?" I asked, pointing at the sign. "What gives you the right to put this here?" He looked at me as if I were being dramatic. "Oh, Claire, don't get upset. The board voted last night. We needed more recreation space, and since your property adjoins the walking trail, it just made sense." "Made sense?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "This is my yard. You can't just—" He raised a manicured hand, cutting me off. "Actually, the bylaws allow for temporary reclassification of underutilized private lots for community benefit. You'll be compensated with reduced dues for 3 months. Reduced dues. 3 months. As if the worth of my garden could be measured in dollars. I could barely speak. Around us, the sound of dogs barking grew louder, paws thudding, leashes snapping, owners laughing like it was some kind of party. My garden, the place where I used to sit in the mornings with my coffee and hear nothing but birdsong, was gone. "Douglas," I said slowly, "if you don't remove that sign right now, I will—" "You'll what?" he interrupted, his tone still maddeningly calm. "Sue the HOA? You're welcome to try. But as of this morning, it's community space." He turned to leave, the faint smell of his expensive cologne hanging in the air like poison. I wanted to scream, to pull the sign off and throw it at his back, but instead, I felt my hands trembling as I walked to my porch. From there, I watched a child chase his dog through my herb garden, crushing the lavender I'd planted in memory of my mother. The dew glistened on broken stems, and something inside me broke with them. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, walked by and gave me a pitying look. "It's not fair, honey," she said softly, "but you can't fight the HOA. Nobody wins against Douglas Hale." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at the chaos that had taken over my little corner of peace. The wind picked up, fluttering a white envelope lying near my mailbox. I walked over, still in a daze, and picked it up. It was official. Thick paper, the HOA's seal pressed into the corner. My hand shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single-page notice, typed neatly in black ink. "Effective immediately. Your property has been designated for community use as per Bylaw 14B. Any obstruction of public access will result in a fine of $500 per day." I read it twice, maybe 3 times, hoping it would somehow change, but it didn't. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. My garden, my refuge, the piece of land I'd built with every spare hour and every ounce of peace I had left, was no longer mine. That morning, as the laughter of strangers filled my yard, something inside me hardened. They might have taken my garden, but they had no idea what they'd just started. The official notice slipped from my fingers, landing on the dirt like a challenge. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to take my home back and make Douglas Hale regret ever calling it his dog park. By the next morning, my garden looked like a war zone. The soft hum of bees and rustle of leaves that once filled my mornings were gone, replaced by barking, shouting, and the slam of car doors. I stood at my kitchen window, clutching a cup of cold coffee, watching strangers pour into my yard like it belonged to them. Children darted through my flower beds, chasing dogs that tore up the soil I'd tended for years. Torn trash bags fluttered, and barbecue smoke choked the air. My roses, the ones I'd nursed through 3 winters, were flattened. Someone had even dragged a picnic table onto my lawn, right where my bird bath once stood. A man in a baseball cap waved at me. "Hey, you should come join us. The HOA approved this place." The HOA approved it. As if those 4 words erased ownership, effort, and decency. I walked outside, my voice trembling. "You can't be here. This is private property. You're trespassing." A woman holding a white dog gave a mocking laugh. "That's not what Douglas said. He told us it's a community space. Maybe you should talk to him if you're confused." Confused. The word burned. I wasn't confused. I was furious. But every attempt to argue was met with dismissive smiles and eye rolls, like I was the problem. It wasn't just an invasion of land, it was an invasion of dignity. By afternoon the noise was unbearable. Laughter, barking, the scrape of folding chairs against my porch. I called the HOA office, no answer. Left voicemails, emailed, posted on the community forum. My post vanished within minutes, flagged for disruptive language. Douglas Hale's name sat at the bottom of the removal notice. That's when it felt personal. Douglas wasn't enforcing rules, he was flexing power. Making an example out of me. Later that day I saw him near the mailbox laughing with board members. When our eyes met, he smiled, tight, smug, victorious. I wanted to confront him, but one of the women stepped between us. "Claire, maybe just let it go," she whispered, almost pitying. "You don't want to make this harder on yourself." Harder on myself. It sounded less like advice and more like a warning. That night, silence filled the house, except for the faint sour trace of smoke and dog waste drifting through the window. My phone buzzed, a message from Samantha Brooks, my oldest friend. "Claire, I saw your post before they deleted it," she wrote. "This doesn't sound legal. Call me tomorrow. I know people who can help." For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of relief. Samantha had always been the calm one. Sharp, level-headed. If she thought something was wrong, it was. Still, the idea of fighting to reclaim my own property felt surreal. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw trampled flowers and heard dogs barking. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and looked outside. The yard was still under the porch light, my fence casting long shadows across the grass. Then something caught my eye. Bright orange spray paint on the pavement beyond my property. The letters glowed under the street lamp. "Dog Park Entrance." It pointed straight toward my gate. My stomach twisted. This wasn't random chaos. It was a plan. Douglas wasn't done with me. He was just getting started. And by the time the bulldozers showed up outside my fence the next morning, I understood. They weren't just using my yard. They were preparing to make their public park permanent. The next morning, I drove to the HOA office with the bulldozer's roar still echoing in my mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The smell of wet cement and exhaust lingered in the air as I parked outside the small brick building that housed the association's so-called leadership. The blinds were half-drawn, the flagpole out front crooked, but the sign on the door gleamed proudly. "Hale Property Management, HOA Division." Inside, The air was unnaturally cold. The faint scent of lemon polish mixed with coffee and arrogance. Behind a mahogany desk sat Douglas Hale, the man who had turned my quiet life into a public circus. He looked up as I entered, that trademark smile already waiting for me. The kind that felt practiced, as if he'd spent years perfecting the right balance of politeness and superiority. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, his gold cufflinks catching the morning light like they were showing off. "Ms. Morgan," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I ignored the pleasantry. "You know why I'm here. You had no right to designate my garden as a dog park. There's a bulldozer parked outside my home, Douglas. You're trespassing on private property." He chuckled softly, tapping a pen against his notepad. Claire, you have to understand something. Community progress requires personal sacrifice. It's not always fair, but it's necessary." His words were smooth, but I could hear the arrogance beneath them. "Progress?" I repeated. "You call destroying someone's home progress?" He stood up, walking around his desk with deliberate calm. Up close, he smelled faintly of aftershave and power. "We're in talks with a development partner," he said casually, as if mentioning the weather. "They're looking to buy into our neighborhood, upgrade the clubhouse, add high-end units nearby. A public dog park increases property value across the board. It's a win for everyone." "Everyone but me," I snapped. "You can't just take someone's land to inflate your numbers." He smiled again, that same cold expression that made me want to scream. "Nobody's taking anything. You're part of the community, aren't you? Sometimes that means contributing." His words felt like a blade wrapped in velvet, soft on the surface, cutting underneath. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Douglas, I checked. There's no record of any notice, no agenda for a vote. You can't pass a resolution like that in secret. It's against the bylaws." He tilted his head, almost amused. "You seem very well informed." "I made sure to be," I said, my tone sharp. "Homeowners have a legal right to review HOA bylaws and meeting minutes at any time. It's in the state property code, so unless you can show me those records, this entire thing is illegal." His smirk faltered for the briefest second before returning. He turned to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick file folder. "You want records?" he said, sliding a packet of papers toward me. "Here's your record." I scanned the pages, the blood draining from my face as I read. There it was, a board meeting summary dated 2 weeks ago. A motion passed unanimously to approve the community dog park, with my name listed as in attendance. Next to it was a signature, my signature, slanted and neat, but not mine. "This is fake," I whispered. Douglas clasped his hands behind his back, pretending to be offended. "You must be mistaken. You see, our secretary logs attendance and signatures at every meeting. It's all official." I looked up at him, anger and disbelief burning through me. "You forged my name. You falsified an entire vote. That's fraud." "Big words, Ms. Morgan," he said lightly, "but you might want to be careful about making accusations without evidence." For a moment, I thought I might actually hit him. Every inch of his office, from the pristine desk to the framed Community Leadership Award behind him, felt like a mockery of justice. I took the papers, shoving them into my bag. He watched me go, that smug grin back on his face. "You can fight all you want, Claire," he said as I reached the door. "But this is already done. The community is behind me." I turned to look at him one last time. "Then you'd better hope your lies hold up when the law gets involved." As I walked out, the sunlight hit the paper sticking from my bag, the falsified signature glinting in black ink. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to prove it was a lie, even if it meant tearing Douglas Hale's empire down piece by piece. I thought the worst had already happened when Douglas forged my signature. I was wrong. That was only the beginning of the slow, deliberate bleed he had planned. Within days of confronting him, the letters started coming, each one thicker and colder than the last. The first envelope had that pastel HOA logo in the corner, pretending softness. Inside, violation notice. My offense? Grass exceeding community standards. A $150 fine. The next week, another. Obstruction of community access. $300. Then unapproved fencing, improper waste disposal, failure to maintain landscaping. The list grew. I hadn't changed a thing. I hadn't even been allowed to touch my yard since they called it a dog park. But Douglas's paper war didn't care about logic. It thrived on exhaustion. $450, $850, or $200. The numbers blurred together. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by letters, the yellow light flickering overhead, the air thick with the smell of paper and ink. My bills were stacked beside them: mortgage, utilities, insurance. I was slipping fast, and they knew it. Nights were the worst. I'd pace the house, checking locks, replaying conversations. Sleep abandoned me. Even the potted plants I'd rescued from the yard began to wilt. The stress seemed to poison everything it touched. Then one evening, Samantha arrived, laptop in hand, hair pulled back, voice steady. "They're trying to drown you in paperwork," she said, scanning a letter. "But they can't actually do this." I stared at her, hollow. "What do you mean?" She tapped the small print section at the bottom. "See this? They have to show proof of a violation and give proper notice before fining you. That's state law. They're counting on you not knowing it." Proof. Notice. Two words that sliced through the fog I'd been living in. "So all this," I gestured to the pile, "is illegal?" "Maybe not all," she said, "but a lot of it won't stand if you challenge it. Start documenting everything: calls, emails, fines, and check county records. If Douglas forged your signature once, he's probably tampering with the fine logs too." Her calm confidence steadied me. We spread the letters across my counter, organizing them into labeled folders: notices, evidence, emails. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like control return. Faint but real. Before she left, she hugged me hard. "Don't let him scare you," she whispered. "That's his only power." When she drove away, I stood by the window watching the porch light glow across the ruins of my garden. The night air was still, heavy with the faint scent of ash and lavender. Somewhere down the block a dog barked, a cruel echo of what I'd lost. I stepped outside and knelt in the cold dirt where my flowers once grew. The soil was dry, lifeless. My hands sank into it as tears slipped down my face. Home had always meant safety to me, something you built and protected. But now, I understood, it could be stolen too. Inch by inch, rule by rule, lie by lie. When the tears finally stopped, I looked up and froze. Across the street, a dark truck sat idling under the streetlight, headlights off, engine low. Even in the dim glow, I recognized that outline. Douglas Hale's truck. It stayed there nearly an hour. Watching. Waiting. By the time it finally pulled away, something in me had shifted. The fear was gone, replaced by something sharper. If Douglas wanted a war, I was going to give him one. After that night, after seeing Douglas's truck idling outside my house, something in me hardened. Fear didn't disappear. It sharpened. Waiting for justice wasn't enough. I had to build my own. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store and bought 4 security cameras, 2 motion sensors, and a stack of memory cards. When the clerk asked if it was for wildlife, I smiled. Something like that. By noon, I was on a ladder, mounting cameras along my porch, fence, and shed. The air smelled of cut grass and summer calm. That false peace suburbs are built on. But I wasn't fooled anymore. Every inch of my yard became evidence. Within 48 hours, the footage started speaking for itself. The first clip showed 2 HOA board members in my garden at dusk, flashlights in hand. One, Kevin Miller, bent down and sprayed something along my rose bushes. By morning, half were dead, their petals brown, the air sour with chemicals. I labeled the footage, backed it up 3 times, and started combing through my emails. Every fine, every warning, every threat. I saved it all. Samantha came over that weekend, laptop open before she even said hello. "You're building a paper trail," she said, scrolling through the files. "Keep dates, times, and who you sent things to. Judges love timelines. Her calm steadiness anchored me. Together we built folders, spreadsheets, backups. When she wasn't looking, I caught myself studying her. The quiet precision in her hands, the way she treated my nightmare like a case she could win. That night, on the porch beneath the blink of new cameras, she said, "You know, in one-party consent states, you can record anything on your own property, even audio. That includes HOA members." I looked up. "You're sure?" "Absolutely. North Carolina's one of them," she said. "The law's on your side." That was all I needed. The next morning, I added 2 hidden microphones, one near the mailbox, one by the fence, and just like that, Douglas's story started turning back toward the truth. But word spread fast. People whispered that I was spying. Neighbors crossed the street when I walked by. Someone left a note on my porch. "Paranoid much?" The handwriting looked suspiciously like Douglas's wife's. Still, I didn't stop. Every glare, every whisper, every trespass, I kept it all. Proof mattered more than reputation now. By month's end, I had gigabytes of footage. Board members snooping at night, secret meetings on my property line, even Douglas pretending to check his phone while taking photos of my house. Samantha called it gold. I called it survival. Then one night, we found the clip. The fence camera triggered just past midnight. Douglas stood there again, 2 men beside him in reflective vests, a stack of blueprints under his arm. The audio was faint but clear enough. "Erase the fence line before inspection," Douglas said. "Make it look like it was never hers." My blood ran cold. The men nodded, shining a flashlight over my property marker, my legal boundary. Samantha leaned forward, voice hushed. "Claire, that's felony-level fraud. If you can prove this, he's finished." I stared at the frozen frame. Douglas's face lit by flashlight, eyes cold, deliberate. For weeks I'd been collecting evidence, building a silent defense. Now I finally understood what I was holding. I turned to Samantha, my voice low but steady. "Then it's time I stopped collecting evidence." I paused, watching the cursor blink over Douglas's image, and started using it. The morning after hearing Douglas's voice on that recording, I woke with one thought pounding in my head. Prove it. Evidence wasn't enough. I needed proof that couldn't be denied or buried. Samantha agreed. "If he's bold enough to fake your signature," she said, sliding a cup of coffee toward me, "then he's probably been doctoring HOA records for years. We find those. We find his weakness." That afternoon we drove to the county records office, a cold stone building that smelled of dust and stale air. Down in the basement archive, the lights flickered over endless metal cabinets labeled in fading ink, bylaws, meeting minutes, annual reports. Samantha ran her fingers along the drawers. "This is where truth either hides or dies," she muttered. We started pulling files. The paper felt fragile, as if the truth itself could crumble. When I opened one labeled HOA board meeting, March 3, 2024, my stomach clenched. That was the same date on the fake vote Douglas had shown me. Inside the minutes were short, sterile, and clearly rewritten. No attendees, no discussion, just one line. Motion approved unanimously to designate Parcel 12B as community recreational space. Parcel 12B, my garden. Samantha leaned over my shoulder. "See this? No secretary signature. No witness line. This isn't an official record. It's a prop." She flipped to another binder, scanning 2 pages side by side. "Look, same handwriting on both." "That's Douglas's." My chest tightened. Every fine, every notice, every threat. All of it sat on forged documents. Then Samantha froze. She'd pulled out a page tucked deep in another file. An internal expense report. Line item, community enhancement budget, $37,000. At the bottom, a signature, Douglas Hale. Beside it, vendor. Payment, Hale Development Group. My voice was barely a whisper. "That's his company." "Exactly," she said. "He's paying himself with HOA funds. That's not just unethical. That's fraud." The air in the room seemed to close in. The hum of the fluorescent light buzzed louder. Samantha spoke softly, but her tone was sharp. Tampering with HOA records? That's state-level criminal fraud, Claire. He's not managing this community. He's exploiting it. It hit me all at once. This fight had never been about grass, fences, or bylaws. It was about control and profit. Douglas wasn't protecting the neighborhood. He was milking it dry while everyone looked the other way. We photographed every page, every forged signature, every transaction. Samantha's voice grew urgent. We can't email this. He's too connected. We back it up securely, then go to the district attorney. By the time we left the basement, the sun was sinking, painting the courthouse windows gold. I felt a pulse of something fierce, fear mixed with purpose. For the first time, we had the truth in our hands. But as we crossed the parking lot, Samantha's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her expression shifted from triumph to dread. "Claire," she said, lowering her voice, "there's something you need to know." I stopped. "What is it?" She hesitated. "Douglas's wife, Marlene. She's not just a member of the HOA. She works at the county zoning office. She has access to property maps, permit systems, and digital records." The cold evening air pressed against my skin. "You're saying she could erase everything we just found?" Samantha nodded grimly. "Or make it look like we never found it at all." I turned back toward the courthouse, the last light glinting off the glass doors. My reflection stared back, small, tired, but steady. This wasn't just about Douglas anymore. We'd stepped into something deeper. And for the first time, I realized we were fighting a system built to protect its own. After uncovering Douglas's fraud, fear turned into something sharper. Resolve. Every lie he'd written, every humiliation he'd dealt, had pushed me to the edge. But I didn't realize then that my strongest ally lived just 3 houses down. It was a quiet Thursday morning when I met Ethan Walker. He was unloading dog food from a rusted pickup, sleeves rolled up, arms dusted with grit. I'd seen him before, the quiet type, polite wave, head down. But that day I stopped. A dozen Rottweilers watched from his yard. Big, calm, silent. Ethan looked up with an easy smile. "You're Claire Morgan, right? The HOA's new favorite punching bag?" His tone was kind, not cruel. "Depends on the day," I said. "You run a rescue?" He nodded. "Walker Rottweiler Rescue. State licensed, county approved. Douglas tried to shut me down 3 times, but the law's on my side." That got my attention. "How?" He leaned against his truck. "State statute 47F 3.102. HOAs can't interfere with registered rescues or training operations. They can complain all they want. The law overrides them." My pulse kicked. "So, if I joined your rescue, they couldn't touch your property," he finished, eyes gleaming. "It'd be protected as a training site, not recreation space." For the first time in months, I felt power crawl back into my veins. "Ethan," I said slowly, "how do you feel about poetic justice?" He laughed. "Depends how poetic you want to get." Over the next few weeks, we met under the floodlights in his yard, dogs running lazy circles around us as plans took shape. Samantha handled the paperwork, drafting legal partnership documents linking my property to Ethan's rescue. Every signature, every timestamp was real, untouchable. We built new fencing, added training posts, marked everything with county-approved signage. My so-called community dog park was becoming something else. Not a symbol of loss, but of strategy. Then came the HOA newsletter. On the front page, in glossy print, "Annual HOA Picnic, to be held in the new community dog park." Below it, a photo of my yard. Cropped, polished, stolen. Douglas had no idea what was coming. That night, Ethan called, barely containing his laughter. "He's walking right into it, Claire. You're using his own rules against him." But beneath the revenge, something deeper grew. One evening, as we trained a young Rottweiler named Max, Ethan said quietly, "They tried to take my land once too. Called it a nuisance. I fought for a year, lost sleep, money, friends. Then I learned, you don't always win by fighting harder. You win by fighting smarter. That line stayed with me. The partnership became official on a Tuesday. The county clerk stamped the paper without looking twice. Walker Morgan Rescue Partnership. Approved for temporary training operation. Parcel 12B. Parcel 12B. My garden. The same land Douglas had. Stolen on paper months ago. That night, I stood by my gate as the wind shifted through the trees. The new metal sign gleamed beneath the porch light. Authorized training facility. Walker Rottweiler Rescue Partnership. The irony was perfect. Douglas's community dog park was now legally protected from him. His own bylaws made it untouchable. Ethan stood beside me, hands in his pockets. So, what happens when he finds out? I smiled. The first real smile in months. Then Ethan, we let him throw his picnic. The next morning, a flyer hit every mailbox. Douglas's name at the bottom, bold and proud. HOA annual picnic, Saturday, 2 p.m. at the community dog park. My gate, my land, my trap. Saturday arrived dressed like a postcard. Blue sky, soft breeze, sunlight dripping through oak leaves. It looked peaceful, but the calm buzzed with something electric. My yard, the same ground I'd cried over, now looked like a carnival. Folding tables lined the fence, grills smoked, banners fluttered across my gate. HOA community picnic, celebrating our new dog park. From my porch, I watched them set up, arms folded, heart steady. I didn't feel fear anymore, only precision. For months, Douglas Hale had ruled through humiliation. Today, I ruled through patience. He stood at the center, barking orders like a general. His gold watch flashed in the sunlight as he pointed. Volunteers here, speakers there. Let's make this one for the newsletter. He boomed, laughter rehearsed, confidence toxic. Behind my fence, Ethan and his team waited. 2 vans full of Rottweilers. 200 disciplined, calm, and obedient dogs. The kind Douglas had mocked, banned, and feared. The crowd buzzed. Children ran. Music thumped. Then Douglas stepped forward, ready for his speech. That smug, self-satisfied grin. I knew it was time. I stepped off the porch. Gravel crunched under my heels. Conversations died. Douglas turned toward me, smile tightening. "Ms. Morgan," he said, his voice sweet with condescension. "How generous of you to join the community." "Wouldn't miss it," I said evenly. "After all, this is my property." He laughed, looking to the crowd. "Oh no, this is our dog park. A community decision." Nervous chuckles followed. I reached for the gate. "You're right, Douglas," I said softly. "It's a dog park." So I brought the dogs. The latch clicked. The gate swung open. They came like a tide. 200 Rottweilers, sleek coats shining, paws pounding in rhythm. Not snarling, not wild, trained, unified, powerful. The air shifted. Laughter stopped. Someone screamed. A man tripped into a grill, flames flaring. The HOA's perfect picnic crumbled in seconds. Douglas shouted, "Stay calm." But no one listened. People ran, plates crashed, banners tore. The dogs didn't attack. They simply were. Commanding, silent, present. And the crowd learned what control really looked like. From my porch, I couldn't help but smile. Cameras hidden around the yard caught every moment. The panic, the hypocrisy, the board members scrambling onto tables. I whispered into my mic. They wanted a dog park. I gave them one. Ethan, by the side gate, gave a sharp whistle. Instantly the Rottweilers froze, then sat in perfect unison. 200 calm eyes watching a trembling crowd. The sound of panting dogs filled the silence like a heartbeat. Douglas's face flushed red. "This is harassment. I'll have you arrested." "Go ahead," I said. He fumbled for his phone, but before he could dial, the rumble of tires cut through the noise. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up to the curb. The deputy stepped out, eyes scanning the scene, the tables, the dogs, Douglas's fury. "Officer," Douglas yelled, "you need to remove her. This woman is out of control." The deputy raised a hand. "We got a call," he said evenly, glancing at me. But far as I can tell, ma'am, he nodded toward my sign, you're within your rights. The crowd went silent. Douglas's jaw dropped, and in that stillness, under the bright afternoon sun, I realized this wasn't the end. This was the beginning, the moment everything he'd built began to unravel in public view. The morning after the picnic, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I assumed Samantha or Ethan checking in, but the noise wasn't just them. It was everywhere. My security footage had gone viral. Someone from the crowd had uploaded the chaos with the caption, HOA dog park turns into Rottweiler stampede. By sunrise, it had 1 million views. When I opened the clip, I almost laughed. It started with Douglas on a picnic table, megaphone in hand, Rottweilers circling calmly below. Someone slowed the footage, added dramatic music. Comments poured in, justice served. She's my hero. Never mess with a woman and her yard. The internet turned our small war into a spectacle. By noon, local stations were running the footage. Headlines like HOA president outmaneuvered by homeowner. I watched the coverage, disbelief and a simmering joy mixing inside me. After months of humiliation, the story had flipped. Samantha burst in that afternoon, waving her phone like a flag. You're trending in 3 states. Rottweiler revolt is everywhere, she said, scrolling through memes of Douglas fleeing dogs and jokey HOA survival guides. The world was laughing at him. But humiliation can be dangerous. Douglas didn't absorb it quietly. By day 2, the board panicked. Posts and records scrubbed. Frantic emails sent claiming misrepresentation. Every deletion only made people dig harder. A local reporter who'd interviewed me pulled public land records and confirmed what I'd been saying. Parcel 12B was deeded to me. The anchor read a line that made me breathe out for the first time in months. Public property. Designations cannot override recorded deeds or titles. That was the legal nugget that mattered. Deeds carry weight. Bylaws don't erase ownership without a court order. For a stretch that felt like grace, the neighborhood turned on Douglas. Neighbors I'd barely known sent awkward apologies. Some brought flowers which I left unopened. The fines stopped landing in my mailbox. For a few days, there was peace. Then the courthouse envelope appeared. I found it on a Tuesday. Thick paper, plain envelope, the stamp that made my stomach drop. Hail Vice Morgan, the bold title read. Douglas had sued me. Samantha wasn't surprised. I knew he'd do this, she said. He's desperate. He's claiming defamation, emotional distress, property damage. The absurdity of property damage on my own land made me laugh, brittle and small. He's trying to flip the story, Samantha warned. If he gets even a small win, he can paint you as the villain again. Her voice tightened around the risk. The truth had gone public, but in court the rules would be different. He'd hire lawyers, delay tactics, and use every connection he had. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the summons spread before me. Outside, the rebuilt garden shimmered under low light, quiet and orderly, the exact opposite of the chaos captured online. My porch camera blinked, its little red light patient and steady. I thought of the footage, the files we'd kept, the signatures and expense reports Samantha had photographed. I thought of neighbors who had seen the truth firsthand. I felt the strange steadiness that comes when fear turns tactical. I called Ethan and Samantha, and we mapped the next steps. Secure backups, get affidavits from witnesses, contact the reporter who'd verified my deed. We would not rely on virality. We'd build a legal story that could survive deposition and cross-examination. The courtroom was a different stage, but we had evidence. Forged minutes, expense reports, the county stamp approving the Walker-Morgan partnership. The cameras were useful, but the paper trail would be decisive. The legal fight felt like stepping into cold water. It was exposing and messy and public, but it was also the place where deeds and signatures mattered most. If Douglas wanted a courtroom, fine. That's where law lived, where recorded titles had teeth. We'd been preparing in other ways for months, documenting, filing, publicizing. Now those preparations had to hold. Outside, a car rolled by slowly, someone craning their neck to look at the house that had hosted a viral spectacle. Neighbors whispered on porches. The board scrambled to craft their narrative. Douglas, I learned later, was already meeting with a lawyer. I folded the summons carefully and placed it beside the replay of the viral clip on my laptop. The tone of the thing had shifted, from private humiliation to public reckoning to formal accusation. My hands were steady. For weeks, HOA had chipped away at my life with bylaw letters and forged minutes. Now he'd dragged me into the place where those tools could be exposed for what they were. The porch camera blinked once as I whispered, "He started this on my lawn. I'll finish it in his courtroom." The courthouse smelled of old coffee and polished wood. Nerves wrapped in nostalgia. The hallway buzzed with reporters and whispers. After months of paper wars and viral chaos, it had come down to this. The air was cold, but underneath it, tension pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside, the courtroom felt smaller than I imagined. Worn benches, flickering lights, the flag hanging solemnly behind the judge. Samantha sat beside me, binders stacked in precise order. Across the aisle, Douglas Hale waited with his lawyer, a man too young to understand the corruption he was defending. Douglas's usual smugness had thinned. "All rise," the bailiff called. "Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Rebecca Klein presiding." Judge Klein entered, calm, sharp-eyed, and commanding. Her gaze cut straight to Douglas. "Mr. Hale, you're alleging defamation and property damage?" Douglas's voice, once smooth, cracked slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Morgan's reckless actions, releasing dogs, unauthorized recordings, endangered the community and harmed my reputation." She turned to me. "Ms. Morgan?" I stood, palms damp but voice steady. "Your Honor, I didn't endanger anyone. I defended my property and exposed fraud that Mr. Hale committed under the HOA's name." "Fraud?" Judge Klein asked. Samantha rose, sliding a folder to the clerk. "Documentation, Your Honor, forged meeting minutes, falsified votes, and financial records linking HOA funds to Mr. Hale's company." Douglas's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him off. "Overruled." Samantha tapped the monitor. The first video appeared, Douglas in my yard at night, blueprints in hand, saying clearly, "Erase the fence line before inspection." Gasps rippled through the room. Douglas went pale. The next clip showed the HOA picnic, the chaos, the dogs, Douglas toppling backward into lemonade. Laughter bubbled in the gallery. Even Judge Klein's lips twitched. Then came the paperwork. Forged signatures, falsified votes, and that expense report, vendor payment, Hale Development Group. Each page landed like a strike of the gavel. When I spoke, I didn't mention fines or fear. I told the court about waking to find my garden renamed a dog park, about losing peace, dignity, and home. He thought I wouldn't fight back. I said quietly. He was wrong. The courtroom went still. Judge Klein folded her hands. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice firm, "this court has seen many HOA disputes, few so deliberate or so malicious. Your actions amount to clear fraud and abuse of authority." Her gavel came down, sharp and final. "Restitution for damages and fees is awarded to Ms. Morgan. Mr. Hale, you are removed as HOA president and must repay the association's misused funds." For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. The weight of months, the fear, the fines, the humiliation, lifted all at once. People in the audience whispered. A few clapped before the bailiff hushed them. Samantha squeezed my hand. Douglas rose slowly, his lawyer already packing up. His face was ashen, his eyes still venomous. As he passed my table, he leaned close enough for only me to hear. "This isn't over, Claire," he hissed. I met his stare, calm and steady. "No, Douglas," I said. "It's just beginning." He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. And as the doors swung shut behind him, I realized the fight might be over. But the shadows he'd left behind weren't done with me yet. The first morning after the verdict, I woke to silence. Not the tense kind that waits for the next blow, but the breathing kind that feels alive. No barking, no hammering, no notes taped to my door. Just sunlight spilling through the curtains and the soft rustle of leaves. For the first time in months, I didn't check for damage or letters. I just stood barefoot on the porch and listened. The garden was still scarred. Patches of dirt, splintered fencing, uneven soil. But it was mine again. Legally, completely, undeniably mine. The air smelled of wet earth and honeysuckle. I knelt down, digging my hands into the soil, feeling its cool weight slide between my fingers. It wasn't just about planning anymore. It was about reclaiming peace, pride, and the right to breathe on my own land. Within a week, neighbors started showing up. People who'd avoided eye contact for months. They came with seed packets, small plants, and hesitant smiles. "We should have stood up sooner," one woman murmured, setting down marigolds by the fence. I didn't need apologies. I just pointed to open spots in the beds and let them plant. It wasn't forgiveness I was after. It was understanding. And for once, they seemed to finally see. By month's end, life had returned. Lavender, roses, and hydrangeas painted the garden in color again. The air smelled of fresh blossoms, sunlight, and new beginnings. Even the Rottweilers sensed it. Calm now, stretched by the porch, eyes half closed in peace. Sometimes I'd sit beside them, watching petals dance in the wind, and thinking how strange it was that calm could grow out of chaos. Samantha stopped by one Saturday with lemonade and a manila folder. "Good news," she said, flipping through the pages. "New HOA board sworn in. Real elections, outside audits, and no more Douglas Hale." Her tired smile held the kind of victory that doesn't need words. Ethan showed up later with a truckload of mulch, his sleeves rolled up and that easy grin back on his face. "You've officially become a legend," he joked, unloading bags. "Every rescue volunteer I know has seen the picnic video." I laughed, the kind of laugh that felt strange, like my lungs had forgotten how. The three of us worked until dusk, spreading mulch, trimming hedges, rebuilding what had been torn down. When the sun dipped behind the trees, the garden glowed gold and soft, the air rich with the scent of grass and closure. "I think it's finally over," I said, watching the dogs doze near the fence. Samantha sipped her drink. "For now," she said quietly, "people like Douglas don't disappear. They just find new masks." Her words lingered long after they drove away. I stood by the gate, the night humming with crickets, the air cool and steady against my skin. For a moment, it felt complete, like the world had finally exhaled with me. Then I saw it. An envelope stuck out from the edge of my mailbox, the county seal stamped in red across the top. I tore it open under the porch light. The first line made my stomach twist. "County inspection notice, urgent. Parcel 12B subject to review." I looked out at the garden. The flowers, the soil, the calm I'd fought so hard to win. The porch light flickered against the paper in my hand. The war was supposed to be over. But peace never lasts long when power's still watching. There's a kind of silence that comes after a long fight. Not the empty kind, but the kind that feels earned. The kind that makes you breathe differently. When I walk through my garden now, I still see the scars. A patch of soil that never quite recovered, a fence post that leans a little too far. The faint outline of where that cursed public dog park sign once hung. But those scars don't bother me. They remind me that peace doesn't come free. It's something you protect day by day, even when no one's watching. I've learned that the real power in this world doesn't come from titles or committees or gold cufflinks. It comes from standing your ground when everyone tells you to sit down, from knowing the laws written to protect you, and daring to use them. The HOA tried to make me small. They called me stubborn, difficult, paranoid. But they underestimated the one thing that keeps ordinary people from breaking: persistence. The cost of silence is heavy. When you don't speak up, you don't just lose your voice. You lose your claim to what's yours. I spent months trapped in fear because I believed the system was too big to fight. But once I started documenting, recording, learning, everything changed. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be written down. That's the lesson I carry. Always record everything. Always read the fine print. Always know your bylaws before someone weaponizes them against you. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my porch with a cup of tea and watch the Rottweilers doze near the fence. Their steady breathing mixes with the chirp of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint hum of life returning. And I think about how close I came to losing all of it. Not just my garden, but the part of myself that believed justice was still possible. I fought for my land because it was my home. And that word, home, is sacred. It's the patch of earth that holds your memories, your roots, your peace. When someone tries to take it, they're not just stealing dirt and grass. They're trying to erase who you are. But the law, when you learn to wield it, is stronger than any HOA board or corrupt official. It's the one equalizer they never expect you to use. Now, when I look at my garden, I don't see a battlefield. I see proof. Proof that truth, when tended with patience, can bloom again. The flowers came back brighter, stronger, and so did I. If you've ever faced an HOA that crossed the line, I want to hear your story. Tell me, what would you have done if this happened in your backyard? Your comments aren't just stories. They're proof that ordinary people can stand up to power. Don't let their silence win. Hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe so you never miss another real fight for justice. Because next time, the battle might be on your street.